Good day, everybody. WoofDriver coming at you live yet again, and we're getting into our Tuesday routine, as you might notice. We're trying to be there. So, playing behind me, around me, wherever you're looking at this, besides me looking goofy in the Apple Vision goggles, is the latest video from actually yesterday. So, really cool vantage point here because the camera, that's why the pole's shaking a little, is mounted to a pole in front of the dogs. So, it skews the perspective some. So Inyo looks like she's out in front, which she is mostly, but the other dogs are pretty close to her. And in some cases, they will get ahead of her however much they can. So this is pretty interesting. When you run dogs, there's different formations. And this probably gets into more of a professional musher's world. But remember, I'm making everything palatable and digestible for everybody out there to pretty much do this with their dogs, to adventure with their dogs in ways they never knew was possible, to have high energy breed dogs. Again, we're at the big farm here, and you can see the camera turning there, all because the ways I'm pioneering makes it possible in the sense that you don't have to have the knowledge, the training, or the physicality of a full-time musher or someone who does this on a more professional level, if you will. So here I'm running the dogs with something they call dog roading. So probably, 99.9% of the population has never heard of that in the world. I'm talking. It's a real niche sport, like a lot of the dog sports I do, that was developed actually for the hunting breeds, for the hunting world. It's designed to condition dogs. So, me, WoofDriver, I recognize a sport that I think most dogs will like, husky dogs will like, and I try to make it so I can do it and probably most others can do it. So basically here, I'll explain it real quickly. Dog roading is a sport where the dogs are resisting their movement, essentially resisting, like us resisting if we were pushing. Like you might notice football players will line up, and in training camps they'll be pushing the pads or what look like people maybe to get their pushing resistance muscles and feeling in their body to strengthen it and to understand it, and so they can use it more effectively and more efficiently. So it's not, at least that I know of, I haven't seen it done in a lot of other ways with dogs. So this is really a good way of doing it. One of the few that I know. I'm sure there's others out there. Obviously, I don't know everything. I just know what I do and what I've learned about. But the resistance is created by a specialized harness here where the dogs are pushing against that harness. So I know people say, well, it's not good for the dogs. It's restricting their movement. If the harness is fitted properly, it's called a roading or a dog roading harness. If it's fitted properly, certainly won't go in their throat. You would hear the dog choking, God forbid. You don't want it there. And it's not really on their shoulder levels. It's just above. Maybe it restricts that movement in some ways. But again, it's about resistance. So we're not doing it every day we work out. It's about the dogs building those muscles so they can not resist, but assist that resistance at some point. That's what you're building for. So I think that, at least my experience, and that's all I can talk to you from, it's a really effective way. Hey, Haley Stevens, we've got a comment. Haley, great to see you. I'm sorry I'm turning away. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Well, thank you so much, Haley. I really appreciate it. Wonderful day full of dogs. I really appreciate that, as always. And I really appreciate you tuning in and all the comments you leave and all your support and everything else. I'm just trying to get my Apple Vision working properly so I can see all the comments. Thank you so much again. It means so much to me, and it motivates me, everybody commenting and all the support, because I know people are hopefully getting something out of this by that. So, and everything I do is really about the betterment of all dogs. And we've got Danielle Fulgham. Danielle, thanks for the inspiration. Started my season, been running the pups the last week. Still a little warm for all out, but they're happy to be moving again. Exactly. Thanks so much for the comment, Daniel. I really appreciate it. And that is so true that it's in a lot of places right now, it's really too warm. But as I do it, I go because of what we're doing with dog motorsports and people that understand know how to run dogs. I can control their exertion level basically. Not all dogs. Some dogs are really just pullers and really gung ho, and they're going to be gung ho no matter what. So those you really have to be careful with. But you can, when you have a lot of the dogs that I work with, my dogs, my generations of dogs, in the warmer temperatures, they're calmer. So a walk or how we do dog motorsports is more appropriate for them, and it controls their exertion level. So right now, Inyo is out. The camera's more closest to her, and that's why again you're getting that perspective. But we had so much fun yesterday. It was about 73 when we started, and it got to about 68. I'm going to say humidity was in the low 40s. Maybe touched on 45%. So it was dry. It's been dry, and I got another story about dryness. But it was a nice breeze too. Really great running conditions for them. So that's why it makes it appropriate. Daniel was also saying, and I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Daniel, but I really like inspiring people. That's why I'm here again. I want to get people really into this as much as possible, just into forming that bond with the dog and doing all the things we do that dog people do and taking it to another level. So that's why I get out here on social media. And there's so many misunderstandings about, oh my gosh, the dog's pulling that, when dogs pulling is fine as long as they're conditioned for it and as long as you have the right equipment and understand their capacities and capabilities. But a lot of what I do, dog motorsports, is not truly pulling. A lot of times I'm assisting them with motors. Even in the winter, I mean, they can let it all hang out. Don't get me wrong. They can go full tilt. But as they get older, as they become seniors, I can control all the exertion levels again. So it can be a lifetime sport. It can be something we do, an adventure with them, in a lifetime way, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm sorry here, my Apple Vision is just acting up for some reason. So I wanted to touch upon that, and I wanted to also mention the dog roading aspect again, that it's really cool if you have the capabilities of if you might have a lot of land or know somebody that's got a farm or et cetera, you can even go to ATV parks and ATV areas once you have the dogs trained to do this. And when I say that, training is minimal because instinct for them is to keep on rolling, to run, to do that, to do their thing. Christy Loudon. Christy, great to see you. Love your videos. I love the education you're giving. So many people here. So many people have to be about this breed. We've had this conversation before, lots of laughs. We sure have, Christy, and I really appreciate all your support, all your comments on the videos. I know we interact a lot on social media, on Facebook. So it's so true. And again, you can say this, I can say this till I'm blue in the face, that what almost all people are doing with these husky breeds, with working breeds, with high energy breeds, are doing breed appropriate exercises, and people don't understand it. And someone had said it really well. I don't know if it was you, Christy, or not. You have to consider they can walk what they do. They can travel what most humans will travel on an average month. Cheryl Kovatek. Cheryl, great to see you. Looking good. So cool and rolling. Love the girls. Carry on. Thanks so much again, Cheryl, for all your support. I really appreciate all your comments. I always get to have a good laugh. You're got a good sense of humor, and it's really nice. And I know Lola's your girl. So, but getting back to, we're a special group of people here that everyone's that commented and probably tuning in, that we understand the working breeds, and especially along the lines of huskies, what they do and what they need to do. And again, someone mentioned that comment. Daniel, again, 2 of my pack of 9 are Sepala Siberian Huskies. No off switch with those 2. Exactly. Yeah. It's so funny because a lot of people will get these huskies, of course, and they don't understand there is no off switch for some of them. Some of them are definitely calm. I've got a couple girls that are a little more laid back, but the ones that aren't are really off the charts. I mean, of course, you can get them at all levels of engagement and extra activity levels. But I've had quite a few in my life that are off the charts. And right now, Nikita and Cyan, and Nikita is probably the most. I mean, she is just a working dog. She'll do anything to any level. And the good thing about Nikita, though, through all of the way we work them through Dog Motorsports, and I say we, my team and me, of course, they're my dogs. The way we do everything, she lets me know when she wants water. She lets me know when she wants a rest. It's really incredible, though it's few and far between that she wants a rest. And obviously when it's colder out, it's definitely few and far between. But she also lets me know when she's had enough rest or enough water, because she's like a bullet of dynamite. And that's what Daniel's saying. Stefan Bierborn. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I got harassed the other day by some random guy. I was only going 6 miles per hour. So, I understand what you're saying. So I don't know if you're talking about being with dogs or out there on the trail. There's a lot of trail users, and this becomes a problem for all trail users. But there's people, especially, and I don't want to give us e-bike riders, because that's what Dog Motorsports is, riding with motor and a dog and using the throttle. But 6 miles per hour is probably about an average pace for these dogs, actually a little faster. But we are going usually at a slower pace, and people on the trails with these e-bikes a lot of times are flying. I mean, I don't know, they could be 25, 30 miles per hour. So anybody walking, anybody with dogs, anybody just even jogging, they're going to be faster, and they can create a problem, especially getting to a congested area. So, and that's why trails are so, they're getting more and more open to people on e-bikes, but there are a lot that are looking out for people speeding. So anytime they see you have dogs, if doing what I'm doing, they're going to realize if you do, I mean, it's possible in some of these rigs I can get around 20 miles per hour, but not much faster than that. So most park police, DNR, whatever that I've come in contact with, they're fine with me going any pace I want to go, because they realize obviously the dogs are under my full control. I always yield to everybody. It doesn't matter if they're supposed to yield to me or not. I yield to them. So I will strike it up when the dogs want to sprint. I will let them do that as long as the area is clear. And a lot of trails we go to, depending on the time of year, aren't too populated, but we do run into some more populated areas. And occasionally, you might have seen us about back in March, we did Baltimore City. So that's my hometown, Baltimore. And we were actually shooting a pilot that hopefully everybody will get to see. It was an amazing experience. But I've done Washington, D.C., like I said, Baltimore, and I've done the boardwalk in Atlantic City, Wildwood, New Jersey. So I've done some populated areas. I like doing that too, as long as we are prepared for all the traffic. And usually I'll bring an extra person or two. And so Stefan, I hope I'm saying your name wrong. I don't know if Stephen or Stefan. He's in the Baltimore County area. Very cool. So yeah, I actually am born and raised in Baltimore County. So I'm very familiar with it and go all over and love it. And that's where those are my go-to trails, like the North Central Railroad, which is in the Hunt Valley area, and it goes up to past New Freedom, goes into York, Pennsylvania. That's where I learned a lot of what I do. That's where I started out. So thanks so much for mentioning that. Daniel, looking at my Risden Dryland cart with new eyes, I really like your crossbar rig that puts the team in a line. Might be a dry do-it-yourself conversion in the future. Exactly. Yeah, putting them in the line really makes us have a compact footprint, and it welcomes us for. Thanks, Stefan. I'm getting it all mixed up. He's telling me I'm pronouncing his name right. Thank you. So that single line or double line formation to a dog on each side, and you can do it with one dog in the center. I was playing with a 3-dog design where I had two behind and one in the center. Makes us so compact, even with dog on each side, like I'm saying. So we are welcome on almost all rail trails. Rail trails are the majority that I know of biking trails, I think, in the world. So they're old converted railroad beds that they put for pedestrian and trail traffic, like bikes, even like what I'm doing. And there's some, like the C&O Canal is not a true rail trail. It's more of a towpath, if you will, and it does narrow out in some areas. But most of it is more like the lay of a rail trail. So what we do is we go there a lot. That's another area. Now, that's not in Baltimore County, obviously, but that's another area that goes from Washington, D.C. to Cumberland, Maryland. And with the C&O, they do have people that run sled dog rigs more in a different way that I do, more traditional ones that you're more likely to see, and they'll run sleds in the winter. So the C&O has a stipulation that you can only run sled dog rigs. I think it's from November until March, maybe, I think it's March. And I've been out there and I've actually gotten pulled over by the DNR, and they didn't know what the heck they were looking at. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if you're legal. And this was a night run. If you saw me a few days ago, I was on another night run, not on the C&O though. And they didn't know. And because I was so cooperative with them, this was like 2 a.m. We were out there because it was the cool of the day. We were out there on a summer day and summer night. And when they saw us again, he was taken back. He's like, oh my gosh, what is this? I mean, kind of fascinated and impressed, if that's the right word, but also concerned that maybe he's not doing his job if he doesn't tell us to leave the trail. So I talked to him and explained to him what we're doing. And actually, I've been in touch with the C&O main office, with the home office that manages the trail. Chesapeake and Ohio, it stands for C&O, if you don't know. And they've actually told me that I'm permitted. They've seen what I do, and they actually like what I do. And because it promotes the trail in a lot of ways, most of these trails want people to use their trail, because the busier they get more funding, maybe they get more access, so they can fix the trails up more, extend the trails, whatever. So they like me being almost a representative of the trail in some capacities. And because I'm so, I guess, friendly, if you will, and so, how can I say it? So, I guess socialize. I socialize out there with other people that are so love what we do, and they've never seen anything like it. And when people have kids, the kids pet the dog sometimes if we're stopped. So they just love, like an ambassador of the trail, if you will. So they've already told me I can come year round. And remember, I'm not utilizing the whole trail. So there's plenty of room out there. On a sled dog rig, you usually have a lead sled dog that's on a tow line or a gang line. You're familiar with that, where you see them and the sled dog teams, they can move any which direction. The lead dog keeps them all as single file as can be. But if the lead dog deviates a little bit, whatever, on a tight trail, you could move into somebody else's lane. Let me restart my video here. I'm sorry, it stopped. And if you move into somebody else's lane, let me restart this. There it goes. You could cause a problem. Somebody could be scared of dogs. They could be the C&O straddles sometimes the canal, which is defunct, and the Potomac River. They could wind up in the river or the canal. I mean, it could be a major problem. Stefan, I'm using Dutch Shepherds. Very cool. Very cool. Yet, so many dogs love getting out there and doing dog sports. So what I call my sports, again, dog moto sports, they're not true dog powered sports, but it gets the dogs out there people say, well, how do you train the dogs? Well, there's really not a lot of training, because it's instinctual for most dogs to run, to trot, to walk, and to go forward. So if you're doing that, you put them on a bike, they're going to pretty much go. Now, the only fear factors become the bike itself or the equipment you're using. Some dogs are scared. Is that bike going to hit me? Is that bike going to run over my paw? Whatever. And that's where some training might come in. When you have other dogs to lead the way, other dogs will train them, essentially. It's just like anything else. When you do training with dogs, not all the time, but a lot of times, if you have another dog with you that's trained the way you want the dog to be trained, it really helps out and makes the dog feel more comfortable. So with the C&O Chesapeake and Ohio, which is such a great trail, again, 184.5 miles, I believe. One of the most scenic aspects is the Paw Paw Tunnel, which is like a 5/8 mile tunnel in there, and it's dark inside. Bring lights. I've actually run the dogs through there, but they're so happy to have me out there that when the DNR officer talked to them the next day, he didn't even give me a warning or anything. They let him know that I'm welcome on the trail at any time, and I talked to them again after that, and I wasn't upset that this DNR officer pulled me over. I mean, he's doing his job, but they actually were very, very nice. So that's what I mean by the dog motorsports and what I'm doing with the single line. When they're on a bar like that, they're under 100% your control. They can't move in any other direction but within inside that bar. Sometimes they can maybe get under it and put their nose, but they're not going to interfere with any other trail users. Where again, if you're running a sled dog team with a gang line or a tow line in the center, and the lead dog is keeping it taut. That's how all the other dogs stay behind the lead dog. And that lead dog moves a little to the left, a little to the right, whatever the case may be. You could be in somebody else's trail lane. And if you are, I've run into people. I've been doing this for over 30 years. So I've come across people on a trail that are petrified of what we're doing. They're petrified of dogs in general. And why they're out on the trails, I don't know. But they've had bad experiences. So they see my dogs and me, and they will move as far away as they can. I had one guy who was almost in the river, and I'm like, I didn't understand how he was even out there. I mean, because just somebody walking a dog he's scared of. So Daniel, lots of laughs when you get a bunch of dogs in a huge tangle to consider. It would look like chaos, but it's all part of mushing. Bliss when everything goes well, torture when it doesn't. Exactly. So with the gang line, like we're talking about, and that's one of the reasons I've never really I've done it a few times with a gang line with the dogs out there, with other dogs, not my dogs. I've actually done it with my dogs. I should say with bike joring for many a times, but with a big sled dog team and a gang line, if it twists up, it's torture, like he's saying. Actually, someone I know has run the Iditarod, and it's common. Dogs will fight sometimes, territorial, especially competitive dogs like Huskies. So they actually had such a bad dog fight, they got tangled, and he had to quit the run. The next year he was able to continue on. So dogs are, they can be unpredictable, and the elements that we're exposed to when we go out on these trails and run the dogs are unpredictable as well. So we really need to understand everything going on, and sometimes have to be prepared for almost any contingency. I always say expect the unexpected. If you've seen some of my most recent videos, the dogs were coming at us, and they were going to run into us. Their trajectory, they were coming, they were going to intersect at the trail head where it crossed the driveway. They got out of their yard. There were two of them. And I don't want to, this is why a lot of people don't run dogs on trails, because they're worried about loose dogs out there. And because of the way we travel, I had my co-pilot, I call him, with me on the trail. He was actually turning around to watch me cross the street, and he said, and he didn't see the dogs, and I said, dogs on the right, and he immediately turned, and like a textbook example scenario, he immediately turned, called the dogs to him. He's got all kinds of, like a ventriloquist, made some kookaburra sounds, somebody said, made some funny sounds, and the dogs just followed him till I got past that intersection. And then one turnaround actually started coming towards me, but that was short-lived. So you never know what's out there, from sometimes dogs interacting with themselves and having a little bit of a spat to a flat tire for what we do, which I had the other night. I had actually a lot of tires I use, we put foam inserts in, because we go through so many different areas. And on the trails, again, you just don't know what you're going to run into. So the foam inserts are basically make not quite a solid tire, but it can't pop, essentially, from using an inner tube. Well, the bad thing about the foam insert was that it pushed the tire off the rim. So I'm always checking my equipment, looking down. That's why if you see my videos, you'll see me doing that. I look down, and the tire is running in a skewed manner, if you will. It's not oblong. It's not running a full circle. So I realized, hey, I got a problem here. So when you identify a problem, first thing to do is address it immediately, because it's not, you ignore it, it's not going away on its own. So when I called my co-pilot and we looked at it and evaluated how the foam insert was coming off the rim, and we got it back on, but we put some cable ties around it now. Remember, we're not going to put too much pressure on it because there's no tube to pop. So we cinched it down pretty good, and that foam is tough. I don't know if you've ever felt them. And I was able to carry on until we met up with my wingman. My wingman's the guy who drops us off at one part of the trail and picks us up at another. So, and we do that just real quickly because the dogs, by double tracking, if I parked my vehicle at the trailhead and I went up 10 miles and I'd have to come back 10 miles with the dogs, they've already smelled their scent. They know they've been there and they're just not as motivated. It's not as exciting for them. And for us too, we like seeing a lot of these trails, when we're really doing our WoofDriver on tour traveling, we only come to, sometimes we've only been there once in my lifetime. Sometimes it's once during the season, once during the year, etc. So my wingman drops us off at one place and picks us up at another, and he also maintains all my equipment. So I called ahead to him on our walkie-talkies, and I said, hey, his name's Crispy, I've got a problem. And I actually was able to get him a picture so he could bring the proper equipment. And he actually met us out on the trail. So we have a support bike. So he met us out on the trail, and he's more equipped to fix everything. He can do it in his sleep. So we actually have metal cable ties. He brought metal cable ties, which made it even a better fix. And until we could address this wheel issue, maybe the rim is skewed a little bit, and that's why it wasn't riding straight. Who knows? But we will address that. So the metal cable ties did the trick, and we were able to continue on with our evening. So again, I was out at night because we're coming into fall. It's still late summer here, and the temperatures when you get to the mountains feel like fall. That night it was low 50s into the 40s, I believe, with the wind chill because there's a nice breeze blowing. So the dogs were in their element. I was using the Seiko cart. Not sure if you're familiar with the Seiko cart. I'm dating myself a little bit. They're not very popular now because they're very expensive, but it's a great product, especially for doing dry land mushing, because the dogs, my designs, depending on what we're doing, are in some ways, depending on the harness you're using, how you're tethering them, are almost like a dog walking machine. So that's why I say I can control their exertion level in the warmer temperatures. We're almost like a glorified walk. The Seiko cart is designed, it's a 4-point harness. So they're harnessed in there, they can get more leverage. And there's a long bar that each dog has on them when they're running in a single file formation, which gives them more range of motion. So they can pull harder and they can run faster. So it's a real true dry land mushing rig. And because you can steer the Seiko cart, because it's got brakes, it's got all the necessities you'll need to manage the dogs out on the trail. You can actually teach them sled dog commands. So if you steer to the left, you can say haul. If you steer to the right, you can say G, and so forth. You can use all the sled dog commands, which is really nice. On the rigs that I run, they don't need them usually, because the dogs, only for anticipation, because the dogs pretty much have to follow the way the rig's going. That's why you don't want to make any real sudden turns, of course, no matter what. You want to ease them into turns, especially doing what they call come-arounds, U-turns. You want to be able to go slowly so they can anticipate what direction you're going to go in and adjust themselves. Now, if they've got a distraction going on, it becomes a little more complicated, because you don't want them to resist too much, but it will. That's why there's foam on a lot of the bars that I use, because it'll push them along even if that distraction is overtaking them. And that's where you want to train dogs. There's a command called on by. Go past the distraction, keep going, get through it, whatever. So it's pretty interesting. But the Seiko cart is a really good design, and I think it's been around since the 70s. I actually was the North American distributor for them back in the 90s. So that was because I was so impressed with it. I'm like, everybody that has dogs should have this. I mean, relatively speaking, but dogs that want to run, because they don't have to pull it, because you can get on the back of the Seiko cart and you can pedal, hit the ground like a scooter, like a dog scooter. You can use that to train your dog and to also keep the dogs moving if you get to a more challenging terrain. I use the motors because a lot of times I want to go to more challenging terrains than I'm going to be able to push up or pedal. And that's why I use motors. And also I'm getting older now, and it makes it more appropriate for how I want to train the dogs, how I want to run the dogs, etc. The other thing with the Seiko cart, it's really expensive now, and they never have come with motors. Again, I love motors. When I say motors, I love usually an electric motor to propel the vehicle to give us the choice, because it can assist the dogs, which means I can go to more rugged terrain. I can go to trails that I don't know necessarily the grades of how many hills, what grade the hills are going to be, because if it's not the right time of year for them to pull, or if it's just not possible because it's too steep, depending on the amount of dogs I have, I can use the motor to assist them. And it becomes a lot more manageable, and it takes out a lot of the, can I do this with the dogs? Because the motor makes it possible. So you're still viewing the dogs. Again, we are at the big farm. And again, I'm a little eccentric here, and I've got the ability to rent or kind of do a rent or a lease on some of these farms. So these are working farms I go to, and pretty much I can do anything I want there with the dogs. Obviously, the dogs have to be under my control to a certain extent, but I can train them there, which I do. I can let them off leash there, which I've done many a times with previous generations of Huskies. I can run them on the ATV that you see here. I can do my dog motorsports where they're actually either on the side or in front of me, and I can be as wide as I want. That's why this spider rig on the ATV is really well here, because they're big open fields. There are some wooded areas which are we have to be a little narrower for, so I can pull the ATV spider rig in, or I can use other bikes and other ways, or I can let them off leash to go through the woods, depending on what we're doing. So if you have any more questions or comments, I encourage you to ask them. I'm all ears, besides these big Apple Vision goggles. And I want to share as much as I can with you. Now, here the dogs are in the pond at the farm, taking a cool down, which is really a cool aspect we get to do, because the pond is definitely fine for the dogs to drink, to get their paws into, to swim in. I've had a previous generation, one of my Huskies like to swim in there. So it's perfectly safe for them, but it's really cool when I'm able to take the ATV and that big spider arm and get them down in there. It helps cool them off. So a lot of people, I know I say this all the time, but people might not know this. They cool from their pads. So they emit heat. They actually sweat there. So it's a really effective way to cool them. That's why a lot of times on the trail, you'll see us spraying down their pads so we can get the heat out of them and help them regulate. That's how they regulate their body temperature. Also, their underbelly is, a lot of their internal organs are down there. They lie down there. They're in contact. That's the closest way we can get to them by cooling them. So if you can get some cold temperatures on them using the water, etc., when they swim, etc., that really helps them cool. I'm not as fond of that, because we will spray them depending on the temperatures there, if conditions are right. When I say conditions are right, keep in mind, if the air is really humid and you spray the dog, it's going to work in reverse, because it's going to trap the heat, because the humidity is not going to let it evaporate. When it can evaporate, when it's dry out and you spray them, it evaporates off them quickly and effectively and efficiently. So, but the dogs, so underneath their belly, when you spray there, if you have to, God forbid they were overheating. I've never had a dog overheat. I've been doing this over 30 years. So my methods work for me, how we do it. But God forbid a dog was overheating and you had to get to their underbelly. I understand. And I've never, luckily, knock on wood, a million times, my dogs have never overheated. But if you would get them the care they need, because it can be fatal. I believe they cool their underside with ice or with a cool means. And that helps them because, again, their internal organs are there. So swimming can be effective for cooling them down. I say I don't like getting their underbelly hair. I don't like getting any of their hair submersed, because it usually dries knotted unless you brush it out. So that's a big no unless you're going to brush it out, because it becomes a breeding ground for bacteria, and these mats make them it puts a, how can I say it won't let them regulate their body temperature as well, because you're trapping the heat in them, whether it's winter or summer. So I've been out there, and we've gotten really it was hail, I believe, in the past when I've been running them, when I've been running the dogs during the cooler months, and we've got a hailstorm out of nowhere. And the dogs actually, we were going to stop as soon as we can. Remember what I said, expect the unexpected. The ice started collecting on their fur. These are woolly huskies, which means they have long hair, double coated dogs. So the ice started collecting on their fur, and that can actually chill them. That can be a problem. Plus, they become heavier. It can cause all kinds of issues. So the long hair, and that's more likely to happen with a long-haired dog because of their hair being long, whereas a smooth husky with more traditional hair that you're probably more familiar with seeing is they call them waterproof, weatherproof, because everything slides off of them. They're less likely to get that get the ice forming on their coats. But so you have to be careful with everything with Mother Nature out there. Almost all conditions are taking some sort of effect on the dogs. So we have to know how to manage them better. And that's why, again, I do the podcast here, and that's why I've got over 20 websites to give people as much information as possible to understanding their coats, like I'm talking about here, to understanding, of course, the running, their exercise aspect, and introducing a lot of new ideas through dog motorsports. And something everybody might be interested in, Mush CrossFit, I call that, where I'm working the dogs in so many different capacities, from what I call dog rucking, where I actually put weight vest on them. Of course, it's got to be right conditions, right time of year, to, again, the resistance training through dog roading, to speed training. It's called fartlek training. I know it sounds funny. I think it's a Swedish word. Where people do like all kinds of training to increase their speed and their cardio and their circulation, etc. So I call it dog fartlek. So it can be interval training where you do sprints and then you go slower, and then you do sprints and then you go slower. Interval training right now with humans is a big thing, I understand. So I've actually done some myself, just on a not just on a casual level, to learn about it and to understand it. So I do that. I've done a lot of years of training, physical training in my life, because I've been a martial artist, what feels like another lifetime ago, since I've been about 18 until about, a good 30 years of that. So from becoming a white belt knowing nothing to a master instructor. So I use actually some of that knowledge to help me understand some of the dogs, their real economy of movement, we call it. So if you're walking a straight line, the dogs will use the path of least resistance. So if you're walking a straight line, you're going to make it to your destination a lot quicker than if you're walking a zigzag line. You're taking more energy to do that zigzag. You're taking more time, more breath, etc. So most animals are naturally efficient at their movements, and they will do economy of movement because it's all about survival for them. Humans, we've evolved, of course, with many of luxuries and many of not having to survive, not having to survive out on the land, if you will. So we don't have a lot of those skills, and I believe they were lost in our evolution. But animals, not so much. Animals have become domesticated like dogs, but a lot of that instinct still runs through their veins. So a lot of times you'll wonder, how can they be so fast? How can they travel that endurance for maybe 100 miles a day, some of these dogs? How can they do all that? Well, it's in there. They were bred to do it, and it's still in there. So it's funny because a lot of people don't understand, and they think, oh my gosh, when the huskies out there in the cold, it's too cold for them. That's why a lot of these, I'm going to call them old wives' tales, a lot of these misunderstandings percolate so much through so many things, through so many aspects, and people get the wrong idea. And then all of a sudden, like social media, what was misinformation becomes the norm, and then people think that, and people go along and they will adopt a husky, and when they can't, the huskies really they're beautiful dogs. All puppies are cute. When they're huskies are cute, they're one of the cutest out there, I think. So they're adorable. So you get the husky, and while it's a puppy, they're a little more manageable. They're doing puppy things, you can understand it. But then when they become an adult dog, then the ball game changes. If you're not ready for what they have to deal, they will try to move on in many different ways. And that's why so many of them suffer this tragic fate. They wind up at a shelter because they become abandoned or they become surrendered, or even worse sometimes. So if people understand this and they can maybe prepare better, maybe get a more appropriate breed for their lifestyle, or maybe they want to be adventurous and want to keep up with the husky and want to have that as a lifestyle, then that's a wonderful thing. So I'm WoofDriver here. I'm going to stay on here a couple more minutes, but we're going to wrap it up soon. So if you have any more questions or anything, I'd be happy to entertain them. I want to talk about a little bit, and I'm not going to go into great detail. Maybe we'll do it next week, about these pet pace collars I'm using. They are pretty much a health meter that your dog wears. And I've been really liking the whole concept of them. And I'm becoming a believer in them, that I'm getting accurate results. And they are a really good tool, especially, well, for anybody that's concerned about their health of their dog, but especially for someone like myself that's being really physical with their dogs, to see how they're recovering from our last adventure or last workout, to see how they're sleeping at night. Now, there's other collars that will track their sleeping, but to see their pulse rate, to see their breathing rate. There's so many vitals that this pet pace collar can show that I don't even understand them all, but I'm learning them. It's making me take a more interest and understanding about the dog's health that would be more veterinarian focused. I certainly didn't go to veterinarian school. I just know what I know through the generations of huskies that I had, through our veterinarian experiences, and through our health management. But these collars are doing an incredible job, and I can't understand how it's getting all this information still, but apparently they've spent many years putting together algorithms that track this, and they've established baselines, and they actually have learned what, I guess, the numbers, the results they get mean, and that's what their systems decipher and they display to us, the people, the end users of the collars. And even veterinarians use this. Karen Wally DeGraff, so wonderful to see you again. Thank you for all your support and comments. I absolutely love them. I love answering them. Sometimes you got a great sense of humor too, getting a chuckle, etc. What is the furthest you have mushed with the dogs in a day? Great question, Karen. Thank you so much. So with previous generations, I've gone further than with these dogs, but I'll go in just a little bit of detail. So I always say, expect the unexpected. One time when we weren't as sophisticated and technology wasn't as advanced, we lost track of our wingman, who, again, is the guy that drops us off at one part of the trail, picks us up at another. And I've got a few different wingmen over the years. But because cell phone reception was very limited, and we did have cell phones, but it wasn't like it is today, and I didn't have satellite phones back then, I didn't have any other form of communication, we kept trying to get to where we were in a remote area, to where my wingman was supposed to be. Well, it didn't seem like we were ever getting anywhere. And before we knew it, we had over 30 miles before the day was over and we were able to line up. Now, the dogs did wonderful. And because, again, I was still using, but even back then, I always have been using electric powered bikes and rigs. I was able to assist the dogs to keep them. And that was in my mind, that I don't know when I'm going to find my wingman. So I'm just going to keep going. We were prepared to camp out, actually, if we had to. But we kept going because the dogs were doing so well and we were good and the temperatures were good. They weren't too hot, certainly, but they weren't too cold. So we took comfort in that, but we kept it at a slow pace for the dogs. So, I mean, this was, I don't know if it was 10 hours, 12, we were out 12 hours. It was a long time. And the dogs, even after that, the recovery the next day or so, they were fine. So that's the longest I've been total. With this current generation of Huskies, we've gone 26 miles. So almost 30 miles. And that was again another incident where we had a van. My van had broken down. We were at a popular trail, the in Richmond, Virginia, the Virginia Capitol Trail. We weren't actually in Richmond, but we were in that vicinity. We were still off out of the city. So the issue we had was the van just wouldn't start. So about 4 hours from home, and my wingman was telling me that he was trying to get a hold of different areas. The dealerships had closed. This was cold out. This was like in February. So the dogs were plenty fine. And the problem became that I couldn't stop to rest with the dogs because these dogs are younger and they're full of fire. So when we would stop, they'd be barking and carrying on. We were near a police station. I thought the police were going to come back because that's happened before. And they just want to go. They don't care where we're going. They just want to go. So I kept running them until my wingman could hopefully get this worked out. I had a co-pilot with me. We were actually on, I think we were on one of my tandem bikes. We were together. And he kept saying, you know, the dogs are just rolling and rolling. My wife was the savior that night. She actually had to travel 4 hours to come and get us because the van was totally kaput. All the dealerships, every mechanic we could find that could probably help us was gone for the day. So my wife came down to get us. So that was 4 hours. We got to the 26th mile, and I rested the dogs. So I was still stopping and watering them. We always carry enough water, but it was getting cold, so the water started to become an issue. Was it going to freeze up? Because I've had that happen too. Luckily, we actually scoped out where a convenience store was. We were going to be able to get some gallons of water if we needed to. But at the 26th mile, my wife, I believe, was at that point, I don't know if she was an hour from us or whatever. She was getting closer. The dogs, I could see they were done. And I was like, wow, I finally wore them out. So, and that's what I'm saying, being able to read their body posture. I say that a lot, understanding. And that's why I use all the trip computers I do to know the speeds we're going. When their averages start dropping, their average speeds, I know they're starting to be, their average will drop. My average will drop on what I'm using throttle wise. So it's hard to gauge sometime if it's a half a mile or a mile. You can't really tell that until you start looking at overall statistics. And that's why something like this Garmin computer, the Garmin computers I use, will tell me. And when I see that stopping, when I see that dropping, I realize that the dogs are starting to tire. And about that 26 mile, I could see that. I stopped to take a break for water. And they weren't as anxious to get up. And I said, you know what? I'm going to sit with them and see, maybe that's it. And I did that. And and I was trying to stay in a vicinity so she could easily find us. So into that rest, I don't know if it was 10 minutes into the rest, Nikita, who I like to say is my most active dog, she stood up. So I'm like, oh gosh, she's going to be ready to go for some more. And Cyan, my second most active dog, she was still laying down. So I let Nikita whine a little bit because she wanted to go and start getting her husky antsy self. And I coaxed her into sitting back down, trying to get her to relax. And Cyan was still down. So I was like, this could be it. And lo and behold, soon after, my wife showed up. So that was 26 miles and 30 miles are the most I've gone. Most of our runs are, I like to say, between 10 and 20 miles. When it's colder, we do start adding on to that 20. But when it's warmer, sometimes we'll take away from that 10. I set out usually to do 10 miles, but depending how conditions are, when they're warmer conditions, that's usually the only thing that will inhibit us besides equipment. So I think it's going to be a cool day, and that's why I carry all these temperature gauges. And I start measuring, and I'm starting to feel this is warmer than I thought. And I'm starting to see, is it me, or is the ground heating up? Is the air heating up? Is the humidity rising? Start measuring all that. And if it gets to a point where I think that it's not having a good effect on us, not going to be safe for the dogs, then I'll wrap it up right then and there. Again, that's why I've got the wingman. Hey, we're at the 5 mile marker. Come and pick us up here, and we'll move to some shade. We'll rest the dogs. Depending on conditions, sometimes that's all they need is rest. If they need a cool spot, we'll carry a fan sometimes. We'll put the fan on them and see if they want to go any further. The best way to regenerate or recharge their batteries, I say, is to get them into a body of water. So if conditions, I'll do this regardless, but when I can see conditions are starting to take effect on the dogs, usually I'll stop, like I said. But the first thing I want to do is find a body of water that I can take them down to and let them submerge themselves as much as possible. So if they want to get to their underbelly, if they just want to do their pads, let them stay there as long as they want. If they want to rest there for 10 minutes. And we'll usually do one dog at a time. Sometimes I'm always wearing equipment where I can take all 4 dogs down if I need to. Again, the previous generations were trained off leash. These not yet enough to where I can take them down to the river off leash, but that helps with recovery too. So that's how we do it. The only other way we stop again is equipment failure. Usually if I have any issues with any dogs, which I've really never had, fortunately, on any of these trails I run, I've never, they say dogs, what happens if a dog gets tired and just can't go on any further? The only time we have an issue like that is when they're older dogs and I know what I'm dealing with. So I bring a trailer or I bring a specialized seat that the dog can be in there while we do the trail. And that dog, I've done this many a times, like with, if you know Princess, if you guys have followed me long enough, she was about a 15-year-old husky, and she would get down out of the seat I designed, run a mile or 2 miles, sometimes 3 miles. And then I could see she didn't want to get in the seat then, but I could see she's starting to turn sideways. She's had enough. So I put her in the seat with a 4-point harness on her there because I had to keep her contained to that seat. Otherwise, she'd jump out and she'd get right back in line. She'd run alongside us without the tethers. That's how motivated she was. So, those conditions, when I'm running older dogs, I always have a way to take them with us. Usually, I've been fortunate, knock on wood, never had a injury that would preclude us from going on continuing on our journey. The only thing that has stopped us is equipment, and when we, like I said, when something happens out there on the trail that we can't go on any further, so we can't continue, etc. But fortunately, the Huskies, they hold up. That's their nature. And it's not always something you can anticipate. It could be something crazy. They could twist wrong. I've had a husky step on a thorn out of nowhere. So all of a sudden, I see the dog limping. As soon as I see a limp, of course, like I say with equipment, dogs more importantly, you have to stop immediately. I see the husky limping, and I'm like, what's going on? So first thing I do is check the paws. Lo and behold, there was a thorn in there, like that big, like 3-4 inches. And how the heck did that get on there? And he didn't whine. That was Zorro. So I pulled the thorn out because it was bothering him, and it seemed very clean, like a human might get a splinter that has a tail on it sticking out of us. Pulled it right out of him. No blood, no issues, and he just ran on. We continued on. So sometimes they're quick breaks, but you gotta look at everything and evaluate the situation, put all the data together from the trip computers, from most importantly what you're seeing, because your eyes don't lie, and from how the dog is acting, of course, to evaluate the situation and see if you want to continue, how you can continue, etc. So hope that answers your question, Karen. Again, appreciate all your support and all the great questions. I look at all the correspondence we have here, all the social media posts, whether it's written, whether it's keyboard, I type it out, or whether I'm addressing it here in person like this. I look at that all as helping all other dog owners, because they might not ever comment. They might not ever like a post, which I'm fine with, but they might take something out of our conversation and use that with their dog and get the results they want, get the happy dog, get positive results, understand it better, maybe ask their veterinarian, well, why is my dog doing this? I didn't know this wasn't normal because we mentioned something. Or learning about these new sports, learning about different ways to run dogs. And somebody like the gentleman said earlier that I inspired them, which I really appreciate. They might get an idea how to do something differently than I'm doing, but because their dog likes something else, but to think outside of the box. That's what I like to say most that I do. I'm just always thinking outside the box. And a lot of times, and I'm going to call them naysayers, and I don't really mean that in a negative way, but people will say, you can't do that. But actually, you can do that. And actually, the dogs like doing that, and it's good and healthy for them. You just might need to do it in a different way than you thought of, or might need to, too hot during the day, go at night maybe. The dogs, my dog's reactive, and he's going to go after other dogs on the trail. Well, if he's contained into the small footprint, that's going to take that threat basically, or that worry out of it, because they're there, because they're contained and they're under your control the way they are. So there's a lot of different aspects. I know I've got a lot of people out there, and I'll mention this just because it's worth it, that are just needle me all the time. Your dogs are doing this, your dogs are doing that. Sometimes, believe it or not, I'll get a input from a professional musher that I'm doing something great or I'm doing something wrong. And I sometimes have to have a conversation with them. And I'm not always right. I can learn too. Believe me, especially people that have done this in different capacities than I do it. I'd love to hear it. And people that are doing it the way I do it, I love to hear it all. But they don't realize, some of the mushers will look at this, and just like most people do, and not realize that I'm doing this differently. The dogs, the way they're tethered, the harnesses they're wearing, the electric assist, most importantly. So they don't understand that, and they'll therefore comment in a different way, which, again, intelligent conversation, everybody can learn from. So that's how we do it here in WoofDriver Land. Any more questions? I'm gonna close this out. We've been on for almost an hour. Been a really, I think, good vodcast. I call them vodcasts. Good broadcast here. I hope you could take something away from this. Really enjoy all the questions, especially that address anything. But when we're talking about distances with dogs, when we're talking about different trails and how I accommodate certain aspects of what I do, I love it, because it's always been my dream to do what I do. So to be able to help others achieve that is heartwarming. That's a wrap, I think, here in WoofDriver Land, folks. This was so cool yesterday, dog roading with the dogs and getting the camera out in front of them. And we had some incidents yesterday, which I haven't got mentioned here because I'll be on here another half hour. We had pretty much what would be considered maybe a small fire, or almost a fire, because some wood got stuck on the muffler. It's really dry around here, and it became a quick hazard. And again, expect the unexpected. There we were. WoofDriver signing off. Have a great day, everybody. More to come. Keep up with me on social media. Please, if you haven't subscribed to my channel. Please give me all the questions and comments and everything else on my channel, on my post, anywhere you may be watching this. I'm all over all the big social media networks.